Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook along with Vince Boddicker with Farmers Trading Company. Well, we're seeing grain slightly higher as we move through the mid-session, cattle to the plus side with hogs lower. And Vince, a tough down day in the grains. Yesterday, we did a little bit of technical damage in the soybeans. So we're back up today slightly. Are we just seeing some corrective buying or a bounce?
I think right now you take it as a bounce. You're into harvest. Seasonally, you're going to put that bottom in somewhere around the 3rd to the 10th of October. Not that we couldn't have did it yesterday, but it just doesn't feel that way. Market feels heavy, lack of demand and those things. But you still have to be aware. Could we see 12 to 1240 on November? I think it's still a possibility.
Yeah. So like we say, we closed below 13 yesterday psychologically in the beans. That's not helpful. But like you said, we could test the low, but maybe do we not test it until we get a little bit more combine data and know exactly where the yields are at or
I
what?
think that's going to be a key. There's still people out there that I think want to be friendly because of the weather we had in late August and Labor Day weekend, which definitely took some yield off of the beans. How much, I think only time is going to tell us as we get into harvest. But yeah, I think before you kill it in here too much, I think they want to see a little more data that it's maybe wasn't quite as much damage as they thought.
And the corn market, we actually made our new lows in those contracts earlier in the week. So far, those lows are holding, but do you anticipate we'll retest those levels here sometime during the harvest?
Well, again, as you look at the market today, you're not that far off of it. I think we would go to 469 the other night, I think, somewhere in that area. And that needs to hold. We did get just shy of the 20 period moving average of mine at 483 using an exponential on Wednesday and then failed. So there's definitely sellers when you get up there. But I think there's buyers on the other side because of feed demand. So it's got to see who's going to win that battle. But the biggest point, I think, is the general lack of export sales and demand otherwise. I think it's going to be a little tough for corn to make any big moves.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the demand picture the way it is, exports were not very good yesterday, and we definitely are behind pace year over year. So rallies are going to kind of be sold here then.
That's my guess. And I think we look at Wednesday's numbers on ethanol also. Ethanol production was down and stocks were up. Not a good combination.
Yeah. What about this wheat market? We got very close to actually putting in some new lows for the move in the Kansas City wheat futures here yesterday, but we do have rain chances. So is that market seeing technical selling, or are we just trying to work in that rain in that weather forecast?
I think you're working in the rain in the weather forecast. I think the trade is also looking at the fact of Romanian, Bulgarian wheat are cheaper than Russian, and Russian wheat's cheaper than us, and trying to get it somewhat in line. So you got the faction of the bulls that believe that crop was short in this country. Australia doesn't look very good because of the heat and the dryness there. Who's going to win the battle? But as we go, every time we go lower, we're closer to that low. Whether this morning at 707 and that DKC is a low, time will tell.
Yeah, the higher dollar here as of recent certainly hasn't helped that either, though, has it?
It has not, whether it be wheat or corn or beans, whatever it may be. It's always a negative aspect. And I always think once you get over 100, it can make a difference in there on that U.S. dollar index. Could this thing maybe run to 107 or so before it's done? It's a possibility.
Yeah. I got to ask you, though, Vince, with funds as short as they are, especially in wheat, they're short in the corn market. How much farther did they push that?
I think it's one of those things, as long as they got money to spend, they get pretty bold at times. You wouldn't think it's huge in there, but you've seen it many times where they're making money. They just kept adding to those positions until they get punished for doing it.
Yeah. Cattle market is back up here today. It's been kind of a volatile week. We made some all-time highs early in the week and have corrected. The volatility that we're seeing, are we trying to see a little bit of a top put in this market, or is that just some of this positioning before we go into this darn cattle on feed report?
I think next week will tell us. My idea is it's probably setting itself up for a possible short-term top. The rally that we've had the last couple of weeks is a bit earlier than I thought it may come. typically around the 22nd of each month when it's going to be the cattle and feed report. That live cattle market usually puts in a high or a low. I'm going to call it a distribution top on my thoughts for right now. If we have some unusually friendly information out of that cattle and feed report, and early next week we start closing above recent highs, maybe we're there, but otherwise I think we're close. I had some targets of 192 on that decent. We got very close to that the other day. So again, we may need some corrections first before we go a lot higher.
Yeah, and the market is keeping an eye on what's going on with the economy, obviously, but also we did have some steady cash trade this week, mostly steady, I would say. So was the market satisfied or disappointed with that?
I think to start with, it would be disappointed because I think
Yeah.
went home last Friday. They were looking for 1 to 2 higher. When you had some of the reversals on Monday and the weakness on Tuesday, they maybe looked at toning that down a bit, but I would call it a disappointment.
And the hogs looked really good on Wednesday. We got above some resistance areas that looked like a little chart breakout, but no follow through yesterday or today. What do you make of that?
Again, sometimes whatever triggered the buying on those days wasn't there the next day. I think at these levels, you're going to have sellers coming in. Are the hogs technically overbought? They are. Um, we'd like to see it, but usually when you get a breakout, you really want to follow through that next day, or many times you're just going to revert back into the range we had before, which is what I think we're doing.
So is this mostly technical need or technical action? I mean, is the market really watching the fundamentals right now?
I think they're watching the pork cutouts and the cash.
Okay.
And you last week, the pork cutouts were stronger than one thought they may be and held this market up. This week, they haven't made any runaways. They are still fairly cheap competitive to other proteins out there, I think. So that should help support that situation. But we can't forget we're coming into that October time frame when we seasonally try to put in a low in that hog market.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make. Although I will follow up and say cutouts did follow below $100 this week. So you're probably right about that they followed that. All right. Thanks for joining us so much. Vince Boddicker with Farmers Trading Company, and that is Markets Now.